Hello everybody, so Sangitaniya here once again with another Age of Empires 2 interview, and this time with Capoch. And if that name is not making you giggle right now, then you gotta watch his match versus MBL. Before you even go into this interview, just go and watch it. It's on YouTube, it's on Twitch. Go to the Red Bull site, find it. It was amazing. What you're watching right now in the background is the final map. And oh my god, was it an incredible matchup. Anyway, I'm not gonna keep just fangirling all over it. I'm gonna let you hear the interview in which I fangirl even further. But anyway, please enjoy. I mean, obviously, the very first question that I want to hear from you, the answer from you is, how do you feel going against all expectations? I mean, I don't think it's unfair to think that you were the undisputed underdog in your match versus MBL, and you won that. You won it by a hair, but you won it.
Well, I think it was very obvious that I was the underdog because MBL has been very active lately and has been top player for years. And I just came back to the game 4 months ago. So it was clearly that I was the underdog, even though I think that I knew that I had a disadvantage, but not a big one. Like, I knew if I could play well and play like I usually like, I could not win it, but do a couple of good games, and that's what it ended up being,
Right, and as I was telling you right before we started the interview, I was writing down a couple of questions before about every single map that you were playing, and then we got to map 5. And I think that everybody was just hyper-focused on that map because I think it not only was a very interesting matchup from the idea that it was a decider match and it was a map 5, but also like the castle times and the imperial times were all over the place. I mean, I think you guys, if I remember correctly, you never got to imperial, either of you. You only went up to castle, and you went up to castle like 35 minutes into the match, which when you think about the Empire War setup, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think like only game 1, which was Arabia, was the only Imperial Age game that we did. But Empire Wars is like a much more aggressive playstyle, I think, and some maps are very, very open, which is harder to go up with a good economy. So that's I think that these games tend up to be much faster than the standard games, and that's what kind of happened because like maps are so wide open that it's hard to age up with a good defense and then try to destroy your opponent with a better technology. Usually the guy that spams more army and moves it a bit better and makes good decisions are the ones that usually win in this type of mode. I mean, in probably standard map, game is totally different. You usually the game goes up to Imperial, but not in this Empire War setting.
Right, and I think that, from watching that last game in Atacama, one of the main things that I was feeling after just watching over 40 minutes of an absolute hype game was exhaustion. I really felt tired myself from watching it, let alone, I don't even know how you must have felt when you finally saw, the GG, the exit from MBL, knowing that you had gone into the next round, knowing that you have, a day plus to kind of relax and just practice and focus on your next opponent, which, it's going to be a hard opponent, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So I want to know, how exhausting was it to play about 50 minutes, almost an hour, let alone the other maps before, almost an hour of a map that was almost non-stop aggression from both sides?
Yeah, well, the whole game was very tense. I mean, Atacama is a map that it's really hard to wall, it's impossible to wall unless you just try to wall some of your resources a bit, but that's all. So I knew it, like the game was gonna be very aggressive from the start. I knew he was gonna pick up commerce because they have this defensive style that you can protect your villagers with the houses, and that's like really huge. I knew that I was on a seed disadvantage there because I had only 2 seeds left, and they were good for that map, but not like Kamer that you can actually protect your economy a bit more. So I started with that disadvantage, which I think it helped him a lot to keep most of his economy alive. But and then I think the turning point on that game, or at least one of them, was when I noticed he was going up to castle because he stopped making army, and I decided to go for a heavy push there with my feudal army, and I did some really big damage to his economy. But then once he got to castle, I had to somehow maintain the pressure there, and at the same time try to defend my economy. And that's where I think I did a lot of mistakes because I didn't protect my economy well enough, and I kinda let him come back and crawl back to the game there. But then after I could get up myself to castle and start making camels, I knew I would have again the advantage. I just needed to keep pushing and finally try to break his economy again.
Right, and it was an incredible match. And one of the questions from the other matches that I do want to bring into the discussion now is your performance on Cross, because it not only did you win that map and you won pretty well, but I also saw that, and I don't know if it was BM or not, but you ended up the game putting a TC down where the spawning TC for MBL was. Was that, something that you wanted to do to kind of show some dominance, or, what was going on there?
Well, I think it was a bit of both. Like I really wanted, I had the resources. I knew the game was over already, but because I destroyed 2 of his town centers there. But I said, okay, I have the resources, I can do this, and also just to mess his head a bit because that kind of stuff might piss him off a bit more and just get him off the whole series. But it was just a silly thing, just like a meme, and I think like Cross is a very good map for me. I usually do well there, even though that game was a bit harder than expected because he chose Byzantines, and Byzantines have very strong camels and cheap units, and I had a knight army mostly, and I as Hans I couldn't make something to kill the Byzantine fast. Like the camels really countered me, but I had a much better economy there, so that's why that's the main reasons I won. I dominated the 4 legs, and when he started trying to get the legs, it was a bit too late because he got some of my fish, but the lake was already almost dry, so I didn't care much. So I decided to keep pushing and try to kick him off goal, and just I had knights but with better upgrades, and he had camels with less upgrades. So the battle was even. I had more numbers, so and I had like the castle and also a bit of siege to push him. So that's what happened in that game.
Right, fantastic. And I also wanted to ask a more general question about your draft. From looking at it, it looked pretty good, but I'm wondering, like, what are your thoughts on how the draft went? Were you happy with your draft going into the series? Or would there have been something, some other civilization that you would have rather had on your list than not?
Well, I was happy with my draft. I mean, I also had Vikings, which was banned, and like I banned, MBL had Persians, which I banned. I mean, I wish I had Persians too, or maybe Franks and Mayans. So instead of maybe Slavs or maybe Berbers or maybe even Aztecs. But I think overall I like my draft a bit better than his. But we both got good seeds, I think. Like I was a bit surprised with his Vietnamese pick because I think it wasn't a very good one, and I thought when we played on that Kawasa map he was gonna choose Saracens instead of Vietnamese. But he went for Vietnamese, which is a very good seed, but I don't think it's that good for that map. Maybe for other maps.
Fantastic. And well, now you have a little bit of around 48 hours to prepare for your next matchup, which is going to be against the number one seed of the tournament. You're going to be going up against MrYo. And that is no small feat. I think that if you ask 99% of AoE fans, they're going to tell you you already surpassed all of the expectations that were put in front of you. But what I want to know is, how are you going to prepare against an opponent that, seems to be on a pretty strong, momentum right now? Even though he lost the map to Winchester, so gods can bleed, but how are you planning on facing this force that has all advantages pretty much?
Yeah, I think probably MrYo is the toughest opponent of the whole tournament. Maybe even more than Viper, because he beat him in the last Red Bull tournament. So I don't have any expectations on winning or whatever. I just wanna try to play my best and be happy that even if I lose, I did my best game and I didn't lose stupidly like today. I lost a game that was Land Madness with a very silly mistake early on, and that cost me the entire game. So I don't want that to happen against MrYo. I would like to say, okay, if I lose, it will be because he did better and I did my best, not because I did lots of mistakes.
Fantastic. Well, I'm sure the $1,250 would also make the loss a little bit sweeter on that one. But yeah, man, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, to let me interview you after such an incredible matchup. I'm sure that we will see a lot of analysis of that Atacama match, because it was really interesting to watch for the format. And again, thank you so much and best of luck tomorrow, man.
Okay, thank you, man. And yeah, that Atacama game was crazy. And I think both of us were a bit nervous because it was the deciding game. And that caused a lot of mistakes from both sides. If it was a normal game, it would probably be... I think I would probably play it a bit better, but other than that, I still won, so I'm happy with that result. So I'll see you around, and thanks for the interview.
And that, folks, is all for today. But don't worry, I'll try to keep the interviews coming. I'm sure I'll also be having a lot of interviews after the event is over, talking about the event, because my god, has it been amazing so far. And I hope you enjoy tomorrow matches as well as the matches going forward. They're all been great, and I think so far we've had some incredible things. But anyway, this is not a video about my thoughts on the Red Bull Wololo 2 so far, so please have an excellent day and see you around.